Well, happy Friday, everybody. I'm Sam Osborne, Education Coordinator here at SEA Vic. Welcome to Vodcast Committee Conversations for May 3rd, 2024. Our speakers today are Julie McLean. She's the immediate past president of SEA. And we have David Hamilton and a special guest today, Kate Nicolazzo. I'm going to hand it over to Julie. Over you go, Julie, for you.
Thanks, Sam, and welcome everyone to our May Committee vodcast. As always, our podcasts are a series of conversations with strata experts about how to work with your manager to help you build more effective committees whilst recognising the challenges that you face. The focus of our conversations will be around contemporary issues and more the human factors rather than sort of legal requirements. We leave that to the lawyers to cover off that sort of area. Commencing in 2021, our first series explored effective committees and what that meant. In our second series, we continued effective committees and the emerging sustainability challenges, which of course we're still talking about today. And in series 3, we focused on other emerging challenges, including sustainability, but other things happening in the sector. In 2024, and we're calling this Series 4, we will continue to focus on all of these as we go forward, but probably and also focus a bit on disaster resilience, because you can't start to look at sustainability and climate change and not think about the disasters and how we're going to manage those as well. To review the recordings from past sessions and to get notification of future events, you need to subscribe to SCA, and you can do that by jumping on to our website, and Sam might put a link in the chat box just to make sure that everyone's got that information. Today, we welcome back one of our regular panel members, David Hamilton, to the conversation, and we have a special guest, Kate Nicolazzo. If you'd like to give us a wave, Kate, to talk about the High Life Expo. Kate is from Let Me Be Frank, and with Amy Brand is the driving force behind getting this expo off the ground. David Hamilton, of course, is our resident panel member, but is also a High Life lot owner and living in the high rise, and is our EV expert, building expert, and one of the founders of Southbank 3006. And David is also part of the Expo. So we're very lucky today to be able to talk about it. Welcome to you both, and thank you for joining. As we know all too well, people living in apartments and units have unique challenges when it comes to sustainability and livability, and of course any retrofits to make anything better. So Kate, I'm going to throw to you first. About how did Let Me Be Frank get involved in this space to begin with, because I know there's a whole backstory that our listeners will be interested in, and how will the Expo help those people living in apartments navigate the retrofit journey?
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, it definitely does have a backstory, this project. So Let Me Be Frank is a sustainability and climate change agency who's working with lots of different organisations across lots of different sectors on addressing sort of sustainability and climate change challenges that we're all facing. We're a very small team, so it's just myself, Amy Brand, who you've already mentioned, and Lucy Best. Who all actually have a background in working quite directly with the community on things like installing renewable energy efficiency programs, and those sorts of things. And Amy Brand actually used to work at the City of Melbourne on a program called Smart Blocks, which some people on the call might remember, which was specifically focused on how to helping people living in strata to improve their environmental performance. And efficiency, and kind of thermal comfort, acknowledging that the issues and challenges there are very, very specific. And so I think in 2015 was probably the first High Life Expo that was actually put together by the City of Melbourne and an organisation called Renew, which is a sustainability focused organisation as well. And it ran for a couple of years, and it was sort of growing in popularity, but as the world moved on, policy priorities and those sorts of things changed, and we sort of saw a real focus in the CBD, on commercial buildings. So that idea around retrofitting and, improving the kind of efficiency and performance of commercial buildings, a bit of a shift away from residential buildings. Alongside a really strong focus from state and local governments on doing things like electrification in the residential sector that very much focuses on standalone homes. So installing renewable energy, David can talk about EV charging, but sort of getting households off gas is a really strong focus from a policy perspective, but very little discussion happening for people living in strata. So we saw this as a really significant gap. And I guess as our business, it really was set up purely to go, where's the biggest impact that we can have in this space? And we've sort of, re-established this relationship with yourself, Julie, and the SCA Victoria more broadly to put this event on to really specifically address that gap. So we wanted to make sure that we had suppliers in the room. So the Expo includes, I think might even almost be 35 suppliers at the moment. It's definitely over 30 suppliers who specifically focus on sustainability, thermal comfort, electrification kind of products and solutions for strata. So we've made sure that we've focused on companies that have done it in apartments, because we find that lots of people might say that they've done it and they understand the challenges for apartment buildings, but they haven't necessarily got that on the ground experience. So we've got a whole range of suppliers that might include window coverings and window treatments. It includes solar, it includes EV charging, it includes induction cooktops, all the sorts of things that people might be looking to do to improve the sustainability, comfort, and efficiency of their home in an apartment or unit, but also for the entire building as well. And then we've got a seminar series as well that's running as part of that, where we can kind of get into the detail of people who have done it. So lots of case studies, but also all people who are in the middle of doing it. And that opportunity for people to ask questions, really get into the nitty gritty around electrification and getting off gas, as I sort of talked about, installing EV charging, but also stories of people who've done it themselves. So there's some really good budget and DIY kind of examples out there around people retrofitting their apartments, which is great to hear.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things to mention is that it's on at the RACV Club, but just because it's in the city, it doesn't mean it's just for city dwellers. It's meant to, the high life, because I know the background of the number of councils that are involved, which is wonderful to see. They're very excited about the event, and they've, all of those councils are all doing something interesting within their LGAs, but they're also coming together to support this. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely, Julie. It's a really important point, I think. So I sort of talked about that shift that we had seen a bit of a shift away from focusing on people living in apartments, and it's really local governments that have been picking up the slack. So a lot of the inner city Melbourne council. So we've definitely got City of Melbourne, City of Yarra, Stonington, Marybeck, Darebin, Burundara. I'm just going to check my list before I make sure I don't forget anyone. Those councils all kind of coming together to really acknowledge the fact that a lot of their residents live in apartments or units, and they want to be able to help those people electrify, improve efficiency, improve their thermal comfort as well, and acknowledging that kind of often that split incentive that we've got with people who are obviously renting in those environments as well. But those councils have really, I guess, picked up and taking the charge on addressing the issue.
And before I jump over to David, just continuing that for one more point, each one of those councils have developed some rather good resources, and the High Life Expo website, or web page in particular, is now becoming a sort of a spot to be able to go and find those resources. Is that so? We're building a library that will go beyond the date of our expo, because the website will live on, and those resources. So it's already building and becoming a great resource in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely the hope as we've sort of developed that, is to continue to build case studies where, in addition to the day which is the 1st of June, thank you for mentioning the venue, Julie, but the 1st of June, Saturday, the 1st of June. In addition to that day, we've got this website going on. We've also got some online seminars happening before and after, because we couldn't fit all of the topics into the one day that people wanted to cover. And we'll, as we do the evaluation, we'll also be gathering input from anyone who's coming along about the other things that they want to hear. And
Yes.
so that's actually, so that the idea is absolutely that this goes well beyond the one event on the day in Saturday. And that definitely, that commitment comes from those councils that I've mentioned as well, where they might look at actually supporting things happening within their local municipality as well. So if people are coming along to the Expo, and then let us know through that evaluation process about the other things that they want to hear, events that they might like to see running in their local area is really critical as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, David, a question across to you. You've been helping owners corporations in the space of retrofitting their apartments for a few years now, and so have quite a few experiences, if you like, of how that journey has gone for them. Do you think this expo the timing is right, because from your experience there's a lot of unknowns about how to proceed and, you know, where to go and what to do? And will, in fact, the retrofitting of EV to their buildings be demystified at this expo?
Well, I don't know if I can answer the last question, because demystification about EVs seems to be an ongoing daily discussion. But I think the value that the Expo is bringing, and why it's vital at this point in time, and going to your question about the experience that I've gained from dealing with owners corporations, and what I think the Expo is going to bring is, firstly, it brings together a group of resources and a group of people and a group of experts to deal with the whole range of issues that come up with around sustainability and living in strata. Right? So I think that's a valuable thing, just bringing all of that knowledge set together. The second thing is that it's also the resources that can come out of this, because one of the things that I've learned and I've experienced is that there is no single source of truth about EVs. It's spread around the place. And I spend a lot of my time and energy providing a single source of truth for people, demystifying things, dealing with the nonsense about fire, dealing with the nonsense about insurance, dealing with the nonsense about, can't we just get away with putting a charger in the visitor car space? So because strata is a very complex issue, and living in it and its legal construct is a complex issue. So I think building up a resource base that people can be referred to, go to, inform themselves, and that then will assist people who are champions within buildings about wanting change. Because that's the other thing, that, you know, within committees you have people who are naysayers of doing something, and then you have people who want to do something and become frustrated. Having a knowledge base that the naysayers can be directed to or can be relied on for is really vital to trying to make having a more informed discussion about issues relating to sustainability and life in strata. So that I think that's, you know, that will be, you know, something you won't measure, but that's such an important takeaway that comes out of this process. When I've seen in EV consulting with strata, and I use this figure, I've had 100 approaches from strata buildings. Out of that 100, 50 of them proceeded to doing wanting to do a study or get detailed information on the technical design and costings and so forth. So 50% of them did not even get to that point after an initial inquiry, and they were going to have to pay a small amount, very small amount of money to actually work out how to do it. They fell out. And then for a whole host of reasons, roughly 50% of those that actually found out what you could do and how to do it also didn't proceed to implementation. And I've been working on that, why that is, and there are a number of issues about that. But I think, why do 50% of the people not get to getting the information and working through how to do it? I think that gets caught up in these political discussions that occur in committees between naysayers. Oh, we're not even going to spend that amount of money. No, it's a waste of time. So I think having resources, strengthening the people who are champions, who want to do something, is really important. And that's what I'm hoping is one of the outcomes of the day, because the champions will be coming to the day. They need to be the empowered people, and then that will then continue the spread.
Yeah. Interesting point. Two interesting things, because luckily we have our own Nicholas Abbey, who's going to be one of the speakers at one of our sessions there on building community. And of course, that is one of the aspects about how you get people on a journey to even consider. So the 50% who are falling out, that needs, a little bit more conversation around how to get them to, which also then brings us to our other session that is running as one of the webinars that Kate mentioned, which is called Getting to Yes. So there's a process around building the community and getting everyone on the bus and heading them, in the one direction. And then, of course, there's the process when we're all in that bus going in the one direction, getting that yes vote to continue. So there are two really great sessions that are planned, part of our Expo and after the Expo, that will help that journey for that. One of the other sessions, you've got a couple of other sessions, Kate, that we touched on. I've just mentioned two of them. One of the other sessions is around, we talked about funding. The funding about, because that's an important part too, about how funding will occur. And I know we've brought on board an expert supplier in that area as well. So how important is that funding part of the conversation, and where will it fit?
I'm anticipating it fits in all of them. Julie, I feel like funding is one of the common themes across all the all the sessions. But as you mentioned, we'll have there is a specific strata finance company who'll be participating, but also Solar Victoria. So I'm sure a lot of people on the call will have heard about the Solar for Apartments program, and it had been a long time coming, but it's really great to see out there. And I know that there's another event, I think it's been put in the chat there for SCA members that's sort of coming to specifically talk about solar. But yeah, there's quite an opportunity to talk about that, and there's some government funding around in terms of financing solar upgrades. And I think there's an opportunity to kind of talk about what the advocacy that the sector needs to do to the Victorian government in particular, to look at what are the funding mechanisms that we need to kind of overcome the other barriers at an OC and an individual apartment level, because a lot of those funding programs, from the state government aren't necessarily easily accessible at the moment for people in strata. So we anticipate, and we're certainly briefing the speakers and the facilitators with the seminars, that conversation around funding needs to be addressed in each of the sessions. So whether we're talking about electrification of a whole building, or, you know, sort of energy efficiency upgrades, whatever the sort of conversation is, I think that needs to flow through. The other online sessions sort of focus on waste reduction. So putting in, like, looking at how you can kind of design waste management plans and strategies at a building level to kind of start eliminating waste and move towards a circular economy. And also naturally cool, because that idea around planting and as much vegetation as we can get within buildings, actually cooling environments down, which we know is going to be incredibly important in the context of climate resilience going forward. So yeah, finance, big ticket item. It was something we anticipate coming up as a question, I think, in every single session. But as we mentioned, we've got suppliers in the Expo session who will be available to sort of talk to that as well.
And answer questions from the floor, etc. So that will be good. I'm glad you mentioned the waste, because I was going to explain really that sustainability is not just limited to EV or solar, that when we use that term, it's more broad about all of the aspects of how we live life, and whether that could be holistically more sustainable. What sort of things are you seeing in the waste? Because waste is sort of, you know, an interesting area, particularly for apartments and particularly in high rise, which, you know, has some challenges around waste with chutes and limited spaces for even recycling, or, you know, I noticed City of Melbourne was trialling a dehydration kind of aspect. So what sort of exciting things in that waste area do you think is going to be part of that session? Have you got any inside knowledge on that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things to talk to. So Reground will be the consulting. They've been doing incredible work in this space around, especially for medium density developments. They've been doing work across I think about 10 different local government areas in Melbourne to look at, because the reality is the other complexity around waste for strata is that every local government has slightly different relationships, contracts, you know, expectations around how those sorts of things work. So it can be quite complicated to negotiate. So luckily, Reground's actually been, over the last 3 or 4 years, they've actually been working really deeply in this space. So they're going to share that in the webinar coming up, and talk about that. And I think they'll go from really some of that really exciting technology that you're sort of talking about. And we've seen in some of the newer buildings some really impressive systems that people have been able to put into place around, you know, crushing glass and all those sorts of things. And now we've obviously got deposit schemes and looking at opportunities to, you know, fundraise, I guess, potentially around that. But as you also highlighted, you know, looking at rubbish chutes and those sorts of things, that signage, behaviour, all those sorts of things are actually, some of those really critical fundamental things are actually still going to, no matter how fancy your systems and technologies are, if people aren't using it in the right way. So I think they'll also talk to that and their experience on how to set up systems that actually enable the behaviour that you want to see in the building.
Well, that was so yes, David, I was going to throw to you next because you're living it. And that sounds like a welcome webinar, doesn't it? Dealing with the behaviour, attacking the behaviour.
A very welcome webinar, and because I'd like to know the secret sauce to answering that question, where, you know, all of us who live in strata and involved on committees know the cost that we bear in cleaning out chutes on a regular basis.
Horrendous cost.
And it doesn't matter what education we do. So we are going to be trialing some physical type barriers to try to limit the size of what can be put in a chute and what is put in a chute, because we have signs up, we run education programs, we have but you could actually see that people just, you know, it is the convenience. I walk 10, 15 meters and I put this push this giant bag. I can push this doona that I'm no longer going to use because I'm moving out into it.
Yes.
And I've moved. And you don't know who's done it. All you know is that here's another $1,000 or more to pay for a contractor to come, or worse still, when it gets down and it's messed up with a whole lot of other rubbish, with sort of FOGO type rubbish and stuff. The poor building staff are having to unclog it, and there's this sort of, and then it floods the system, and it really is I think one of the most difficult and bothering tasks for facility management, building management staff in high-rise apartment buildings. It's it's an ongoing topic, an ongoing subject, and no matter what we try to do to change people's behaviour, I'm looking for the secret sauce. I've heard of buildings that have CCTV cameras.
Yeah.
And that works.
Yep.
Then they can target the offender.
A little bit of a dumpers will be reported, kind of, which a lot of local governments are starting to turn to as well. I think there are some models around that idea around using technology. I think in Norway, I'm trying to remember, and again, I might give Reground a little bit of a briefing to talk about what they're seeing internationally around trends around that, because I think it's a shared human problem, but where they're using biodigesters for the FOGO waste, and they're actually having people, you have to tag in to kind of to dump it, and those sorts of things. So I think there are some of that sort of starting to emerge, but yeah, it feels like that building community part of the conversation is, it continues to be a critical component.
Yes, that's the how do people have a sense of collective responsibility in a society which just promotes individualism?
Yeah,
it's the what about me or whatever. It's the antithesis to the collective living experience that is involved in strata, and I'm quite certain it's old people and young people are equally guilty of blocking garbage chutes, right? So it's not it's an issue that is extremely frustrating for anybody who sits on an owners corporation committee. It's extremely frustrating for anybody who's a building manager. It's extremely frustrating for people who are residents who do the right thing. But and then there is no other. The only other solution is you don't have garbage chutes, and everybody has to do what they do if they were living in a house in the suburbs. They have to go to the garbage bin, pull it out, and then once a week tug a bin out onto the street. Here you have the convenience. You only have to take the garbage around and drop it down, or if it's a bit big, catch a lift. How hard is it? How hard is it? You're even being given a device to take you directly to the bin.
Yes, it is. It's a big challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
So we definitely want some case studies of buildings that are doing it exceptionally well and what they've done. I'm not sure the secret sauce. I'd love to know that too, but we'll hopefully there are some examples. And I think that's the other really critical thing with all of this work, Julie, and the biggest bit, and I think talking to your kind of 50% dropout and then the 50% dropout rate, it's probably pretty comparable with the general residential programs I've ever run, David, to be honest. But I think that we need more and more examples of buildings that are doing it, particularly around EV charging, electrification, showing that it's possible to shift that conversation, and similarly with the waste. Like there's going to be different ways of solving it for different communities, but we need more and more stories out there.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you both. I will finish with just a little bit of a plug. One of the other exciting things happening at the High Life Expo is what we're calling a listening post. And this is where you can come along and meet and talk to representatives from owners corporations.
Is that us, or I think that might have been Julie?
I think that's Julie's phrase.
I think that's Julie.
Yes.
In which case, I'll take this time to promote an SCA event that's coming up. It's a sustainability strata case study. We have one on the 9th of May, and it is with Smarter Communities and
Network,
anyway,
OCN.
Whoops.
am I back?
Yes, you're back. Sorry, you might need to start at the beginning again. Listening post, so sort of where it froze.
Listening post, yes. So we have what we're calling a listening post, and there will be members from OCN, Owners Corporation Network. There'll be members from SCA there. There'll be FMA, Facility Management Association, with the idea of being able to hear and ask questions. You can participate in some surveys and just generally collect some data that we can help turn into then the sort of resources that are needed, depending on who we're talking to. So it's going to be a great day. Looking forward to it. It's again, it's at the RACV Club on the 1st of June. The website is in the chat box there for you. You can go and register at the website. Okay, that's we can register there.
Registration's free, but bookings are essential.
Yes, and there is a link somewhere there on the website. You'll find the seminar series, which will give you the program of all of the sessions that are on, and it's going to be a great event, and it's one that we hope will then be repeated definitely annually. But it could be that as we're finding, the more and more we dig into this, that it would be wonderful if we had more regular kind of expos, maybe 2 a year instead of just 1 a year. But as the size of Strata grows as a market, then we will definitely see these kind of things happening more often. So thank you again, both of you, for giving up your time and joining us today. We're very appreciative of that, and we hope to see everyone who's there along to the High Life Expo on the 1st of June.
Thanks so much for having us, Julie. Thanks, David.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.